So I've decided to do a series about all of the official constellations as designated by the IAU, the International Astronomers Union. But before we get started, I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about what astronomers actually use constellations for. Basically, these constellations are used as a map of the sky. So every region of the sky is covered by one constellation. And so any star or object that's located in the sky is inside of a constellation. And the boundaries of the constellation are given by certain right angle and declination, which is basically latitude and longitude for the sky. So that's what we use the 88 constellations for, but they also just have really cool stories and I love them just in general, and they're really great for stargazing and for getting people excited about looking up at the sky and starting to think about the universe around us. So I'm really excited to take you through all 88 of the official constellations. Part 1 of 88. Andromeda! This is what the constellation officially looks like, but that's kind of boring. This is a little bit better to look at. So Andromeda is the daughter of Cassiopeia. And one of the most exciting things about Andromeda is, as you may guess, M31, which is in fact the Andromeda Galaxy. And that's our closest neighbor. In fact, we are in process of merging and becoming a super Andromeda Milky Way galaxy in another like 4 or 5 billion years. So not anytime soon. Andromeda is a lovely constellation, but I don't think it's one of the easier ones to pick out in the sky. It's also somewhat of a northern constellation, and you can't see it any further below 40 degrees latitude south. Andromeda has 16 main stars. Its brightest star, Alpha Andromeda, is a binary, and Beta Andromeda, the second brightest, is a red giant. And Gamma Andromeda is a multiple star system that is really awesome for amateur stargazers. Part 2 of 88. And it is Antlia. And no, this isn't some awesome Greek god that you've never heard of. It actually comes from the word air pump. Yep, that's right. This constellation is named after an air pump. It's one of the smaller constellations, and it's very faint. Its brightest star is only a 4th magnitude star, which means it wouldn't even be visible by eye in a typical urban neighborhood. It's a southern constellation, so it can't be seen above 49 degrees north. And it only has 4 main stars. It does have quite a lot of deep space objects located within it, but none of them are bright enough to be seen by the naked eye, and in fact, most of them aren't even bright enough to be seen through a small telescope very well. The brightest deep sky object is the NGC 2997 galaxy, which is this beautiful unbarred spiral galaxy, which is actually what's called a grand design spiral. Yeah, so that's Antlia for you. Part 3 of 88. This constellation is called Apus, and it is right here. It is another very small constellation in the southern hemisphere. So it can't be seen fully anywhere north of 5 degrees north latitude. Apus was named for the bird of paradise, and it doesn't have any mythology associated with it, but kind of fun fact, it was originally, first that we know of, put on a globe in the late 16th century, and they called it Paradisvogel Apus indica, but they think that the Apus part was actually a typo for Avis, and so really its whole name now is basically down to this typo that someone did several centuries ago. Apus only has 4 main stars, and none of them are particularly bright. This star here, Delta Boötes, is pretty cool because it's a binary that has a wide enough separation to be visible by eye, although it's pretty dim, so you'll need to make sure you have a nice dark sky. And a globular cluster. Part 4 of 88. Aquarius. Aquarius is a large southern constellation. In fact, it's the 10th largest constellation. It's also one of the 12 zodiac constellations, which means that the ecliptic, which is the path that the sun takes throughout the course of a year over the sky, passes through Aquarius. The name means water bearer or cup bearer in Latin, and Aquarius is usually displayed as pouring water into the mouth of the southern fish, which is another constellation. Aquarius isn't a particularly bright constellation. Its brightest star is Beta Aquarii, or Saddle Salud, which means luck of lucks in Arabic. It's considered a lucky star. It also contains a star called R Aquarii, which is a really cool binary system consisting of a red giant and a white dwarf, and the red giant is passing material to the white dwarf, resulting in this beautiful nebula, and it's a very active system. Aquarius contains so many cool objects, including Messier 2, which is one of the largest and oldest globular clusters in the Milky Way. Part 5. 88. And it is Aquila. So this constellation is located on the celestial equator, which is basically just the projection of the Earth's equator into the sky. Aquila is Latin for eagle. Ah! But not just any eagle. This was the eagle that was responsible for carrying Zeus or Jupiter's lightning bolts. Boom. There are 8 stars that make up the eagle, and the brightest of these is Alpha Aquilae, aka Altair, which is derived from the Arabic the flying eagle, so related to the eagle. And Altair is one of the 3 stars that makes up the very well-known asterism called the Summer Triangle, which is very high in the sky in the northern hemisphere during the summer. Aquila has a ton of cool objects in it, but I wanted to highlight this one. It's called Barnard's E, as you might guess, and it's a dark nebula. Part 6 of 88. Ara. I don't know. But this is a small southern constellation that's visible below about 25 degrees north latitude. The name means altar in Latin. And this is the altar at which the Greek gods took their vows before they went to war against Kronos and the Titans. There are 7 stars that make up the altar, and the second brightest star in this constellation is Alpha Arae. And one thing that's really cool about Alpha Arae is it's a BE type star where the E is emission, so it has emission lines, and it's also rotating very, very rapidly, close to its breakup speed. So it's actually surrounded by material that's being ejected from the star's equator. This is an artist rendition of what it looks like based on the observations that they've made. Ara contains the nebula Hen 31357 or the Stingray Nebula. And one thing that's cool about this is it's actually changing over time. So this picture is from 1996 and 2006, part 7 of 88. Aries. So this is a constellation that's of roughly middling size. It's a northern constellation that can be seen down to about 60 degrees south, and it is one of the 12 zodiac constellations. Aries is Latin for the ram, and the Greeks used it to refer to the ram whose fleece was the infamous golden fleece. But it actually referred to a ram as far back as before 1000 BC in the Babylonians. There's only 4 stars that make up the actual part of Aries, and I don't know how you got a ram out of that, but I guess people do. Interestingly enough, centuries ago, back when Aries was first kind of established, it contained a point that we call the first point of Aries, which is the vernal equinox, or where the sun passes the equator, the celestial equator, from north to south. But because of the precession of the Earth, the first point of Aries is actually now located in Pisces. Part 8 of 88. Auriga! Anyway, this means the charioteer in Latin, and it's named because this conical type shape is similar to what the helmet that a charioteer would wear would look like. The myth it's most commonly associated with is a king of Athens who was the first to put 4 horses onto a chariot, and for this he earned himself a place in the stars from Zeus. There are 6 main stars that make up the helmet. The brightest of these, Alpha Aurigae, is called Capella, and it is the 6th brightest star in the sky and the 3rd brightest star in the northern hemisphere. Auriga contains the galactic anticenter, which is the point that's directly opposite from the galactic center. That's at 180 degrees longitude in the galactic coordinates. It also contains this cool object called IC405. This is called the Flaming Star Nebula, and it's an emission reflection nebula that is lit up by a star called AER. Part 9 of 88. Boötes! This is a northern constellation that is often kind of referred to as looking like a kite, which I think you can see here, but it's actually the herdsman. There are 12 stars that make up the main constellation, but Boötes actually contains 29 stars that are visible to the naked eye, including Arcturus, or Alpha Boötes, which is this guy right here, which is the 4th brightest star in the entire night sky, and it's an orange giant. There's also Alcalorops, or Mu Boötes, which is actually a quadruple star system that is resolvable into 3 components with only a small telescope. So if you're interested in amateur astronomy, this is a cool target. Boötes contains this cool galaxy, which is what we call a flocculent spiral galaxy, which is just fun to say. Boötes also contains the Boötes void, which is this huge area of space that has almost no galaxies in it, and is also covered by the Great Wall, the largest known structure. Part 10 of 88. Caelum, not Caelum, Caelum. I had to look it up. Caelum is a very small southern constellation that was created in the 18th century, and it is only got 4 stars in its main asterism, and the brightest star, Alpha Caeli, is only 4.44 magnitude, which means it's difficult to see unless you're in an area with a really dark sky. So basically, this is a very difficult constellation to see, and it's the 8th smallest constellation. Caelum is known as the engraving tool and comes from the word for chisel in Latin. So the 18th century astronomer who named these southern constellations chose to use tools instead of mists, which is why we also got, if you recall, Antlia, the pneumatic air pump. This quasar is one of the only interesting deep sky objects in Caelum. Astronomers called it the naked quasar because they used to think that it didn't have a host galaxy. Part 11 of 88. Camelopardalis, obviously. So this is a northern constellation. In fact, it's actually quite close to the northern pole in the celestial sky. And it's a quite large constellation, but it's also very faint. This is what it would look like with the naked eye. It doesn't have any stars brighter than 4th magnitude. So this is the giraffe here. Oh, did I mention Camelopardalis is Greek for giraffe? Ta-da! In fact, this section of the sky was so dark that the ancient Greeks actually thought it was just an empty spot of sky, and this constellation wasn't created until the 17th century and a Dutch astronomer. Probably the most notable thing about Camelopardalis is this asterism called Kemble's Cascade, which is about 20 faint stars that appear to be in a straight line almost across the sky, ending in an open cluster. And this is very visible in binoculars, if you want to check it out.